Hi, I'm Alex Berke, and I'm going to be talking about shifting diets. This is a bit different than what my colleagues are speaking about because this is something that we can change at the individual level with choices we make every day, rather than waiting for policy or infrastructure developments. So before I start, I am asking you to go to this link, which you can also get to via this QR code. It will bring you to a one-question form that asks you for your preference between two food options. Please take ahead and go. Yeah, thank you. On your phone, whatever device you have in front of you. And the reason I'm asking you to do this is that this talk is about food. We're eating food together at this conference, and we want to make this talk more interactive and let you all sample some of what this talk is about. So if you haven't already, please take the 10 seconds. This will be a lot more interesting if you participate. Thank you. All right, so before we get started, let's just recognize that how we consume food has taken so many forms across history and cultures. For example, there are parts of the world where millions of people have been living as vegetarians for centuries. And these millions of people just show us that there are alternative ways to eat and thrive, while in the US, much of our agriculture is factory farming and animal products. Global food systems have a massive impact on the environment. Researchers estimate that when accounting for transportation, current global food systems are responsible for about 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions, and that if left unchanged, our food systems alone can keep us from meeting the climate targets set in the Paris Agreements. So what can we do about this? We can shift diets to consume fewer animal products. They are the greatest emitters of food-related emissions and are much more resource-intensive than plant-based products. Researchers estimate that producing animal-based foods consumes 75% of global farmland and contributes more than 56% of food-related emissions, while only contributing 37% of the protein and 18% of the calories in the global food supply. This is also an issue for global food security because the world needs to feed a growing population, but producing animal-based foods takes up the majority of farmland. Also, animal-based foods are a leading cause of deforestation. This is due to clearing land for livestock and the products that feed them. And the world is producing more animal-based foods than people need. This is especially problematic in the US and other affluent countries where meat consumption is highest and where the amount of protein people are getting from meat is more than the amount that a healthy diet requires. A recent study found that the standard US diet results in more than 3 tons of CO2 equivalent emissions per capita year, which is beyond our per capita target with food alone, while a plant-based version of the standard diet would reduce that number by more than 50%. So we wanted to model the impact of shifting our local community from the standard diet to a plant-based diet. To do this more realistically, we first estimated the status quo of how many days per week, on average, averaged across the Massachusetts population, people are eating plant-based versus other diets. And we did this by running a survey and combining results with census data using stratified random sampling. We estimated that averaged across the Massachusetts population, people are eating the standard meat diet 4.4 days per week, vegetarian 1.7 days per week, and plant-based 0.85 days per week. We then modeled the impact of shifting from this status quo to plant-based by gradually reducing the number of days people are eating meat and increasing the number of days people are eating plant-based instead. The point is that change can be made incrementally. We estimated that the impact of shifting to local production on top of a plant-based diet could further reduce emissions by about 10%, but the largest impact comes from shifting diets. So how do we get this shift to happen? The answer can and should involve delicious plant-based alternatives and fresh local food, which could also create new local economic opportunities. For some people, it might involve plant-based meats and other novel foods, or just swapping meat for beans and other plant proteins. But delicious food might not be enough. It might be helpful to have further interventions like policy or strategies from behavioral economists like nudges. With policy, we've seen examples in the public sector of cities shifting school lunches towards plant-based, and in the private sector, companies announcing they will no longer pay for meat at events. But these policies can be unpopular and controversial. Another set of strategies comes from behavioral sciences and is about shifting how people perceive choices without necessarily taking away choices. For example, in our culture, meat is often the default, such as a beef burger as the default and a bean burger requiring a special request. But what if this default was reversed? Research experiments have shown that reversing this default to plant-based as the default can have significant impacts. So we did a similar experiment with you all just now. At the start of this presentation, a bunch of you saw a form with option 1 and option 2 with a vegan label on option 1, but a random half of you saw the same 2 options with no vegan label. And our research question was whether these vegan labels negatively impact people's choices. The idea is similar to the previous experiment, where we must transition to a choice architecture where plant-based is the default, and perhaps these vegan labels make it seem like meat is the default and plant-based is not. We ran this as a randomized controlled experiment a few times already with different menu options and found that people are significantly less likely to choose options with a vegan label. So you all just participated in a real experiment. And we ran this same experiment 2 weeks ago at the Climate Tech Conference, and actually these menu options are based on what they were eating for lunch. But this was a new experiment with you all just now, and I honestly have no idea what the results are. And so this is a little risky, but I'm wondering if you want to know what the results are because the production team has them. Okay, production team, could you show us the results? All right, so it looks like on the right-hand side, we have the form results for where there was a vegan label. On the left-hand side, there was no vegan label. Yeah, I think the results speak for themselves. On the left-hand side, there was more options for more choices for option 1. Right-hand side, fewer choices for option 1. Maybe the vegan label had an impact. I can get back to you later about whether the results are significant. So thank you all for participating. Thank you. This was a lot more fun because you did. And thank you, production team. Can we go back to the slides? All right, thank you. And maybe you also noticed that both of these options are plant-based, and they were both delicious. So in summary, we can and we must shift towards diets that are plant-based. And this is for environmental sustainability, but it could also improve animal welfare, public health, global food security, and create new local economic opportunities. And the change can start with us. So thank you, and please welcome Andres Rico, who is going to talk about communities without infrastructure.